Everybody, welcome to today's special webinar on shoe AI, the no BS shoe AI, I should say, because there is a ton of that going around. Before we do intros and jump into what we're doing today, we quickly wanted to just kick this off with something really cool and innovative that I think is very important as we launch. So, Nicolene, maybe you can go ahead and tee us up on something really fun.
Okay, so let me quickly share my screen. So there's a lot of different things that we are going to do today in this webinar, talking about different angles of AI. One thing I wanted to show you to push the limits a little bit is that you can already do some 3D. It's not at a great level yet. So there's a shoe, actually. I don't know if you can see it. I can maybe zoom in a little bit. This is actually what Andy generated in.
I'm a novice.
Andy's a novice, and
I have no design skills. I cannot design shoes for anything. But I asked AI to take a classic Michael Jordan shoe and make it into a women's shoe, and this is what it came up with, which is pretty cool.
So this shoe, we are now getting into kadem3d.com. This is a semi-AI, so partially AI, partially human 3D service that allows you to create a 3D model of this, an editable 3D model, very quickly. As you can see here, there's different things that you can ask it to do. We're going to start with the standard quality. I'll also do a slightly higher quality, and let's see how fast it is. It can be anywhere between a few minutes to like half an hour, depending on how high level you're asking. So later on in the webinar, we'll go back to this and then see what it did. But we'll start generating that, and then maybe when it's ready, we can talk a little bit more about what this does, but we are mainly going to dig into some stuff that is already up to speed and that you can start doing from.
All right. So we wanted to start with that first because it does take a little bit of time for it to start to develop it out.
I'll stop sharing my screen for a second, so I will just do the other render also.
All right.
And we will just go from
awesome.
there.
So my name is Andy Polk with the Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America. It's a mouthful of words, but it's FDRA. We are the Footwear Industry's Business and Trade Association, representing about 95% of all companies. My job today is to help moderate this discussion among friends, I should say, who have been on podcasts before and worked together on different projects before. But we are bringing this free to the industry because of, from what we're hearing from folks, the challenges of understanding AI at its core, but also how do you actually use it? How do you actually know what's real and can be used and is useful to shoe companies today, here and now, versus, kind of the spin that we see out there. We see a lot of hucksters and snake oil salesmen out there. So no better way to have that. I would like to introduce our two experts today who have been using AI to actually design shoes and work on different projects. First is Chris Hillier. He worked at Deckers Brands for, I think, about 20 years. In his latest role, he was the Director of Innovation. Is that right? 20 years?
Almost. I think 18.3.
Oh, there you go. That's important. And he is now out on his own as a innovation consultant to footwear companies, helping them with different projects, and more, I think, on AI, especially about how to figure out how to use that for inspiration and then actual, design development, et cetera. And then, of course, Nicolene Van Enter, who we work with for many years now. She's the founder of the Footwearists, which is a network of footwear innovators across the globe. They focus on 3D printing, 3D design, all sorts of innovative things that are changing our footwear industry. And I should say at the start, she has launched a new AI training platform that is digital. It's ongoing right now. I think it just kicked off very recently, but it's something that is super affordable and super interesting in terms of understanding the actual workflow in depth. For today's purposes, we don't want to go so deep that people get lost or don't understand. And I think at the very start, there's two things we're going to try to do today. One is talk about AI, what it is and what it is not, because there's still confusion around what it is and what it is not. And that's really important to understand what we're going to talk about today. And the second part of that really is to get into case studies We will actually show you the software that is used today by advanced designers and innovators around designing shoes or finding inspiration within using AI. So we'll go through at least 5 different softwares today. We'll show you how it's used. We'll show you what's useful. We'll show you what you need to know, etc. As we go through this, please, at the very bottom, you can ask Q&A, and we'll try to get to those during our sessions. But as we kick it off, first, we want to make sure we're all speaking the same language. So I think the first part of this conversation is just quick 5-7 minutes about AI as a concept. And I think there's a lot of people who are afraid of AI. There's a lot of people who may be angry with AI and may happen to our industry. There's a lot of people who may be excited about AI and what it's going to do to our industry. But I think what's important to consider is that this is a new tool. The CEO of Microsoft, I think, said it very well. He said that for so long we've been on autopilot where we're working on our own, and now we're going to have a co-pilot with us as we develop things. So it's a very useful thing to think about it as it's not going to take over everything in the near term of what we're doing, but it is another tool in our software suite that can make us much more effective, do business better, etc. So as I kind of kick it off between Chris and Nico, as we look at this, maybe you can just share some thoughts and ideas. Chris, I'll start with you on how you look at AI and what it is. And one of your big things is don't be scared, right? Don't be scared of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're touching on it well. I think there's a lot of confusion generally as far as what it does and how it works. And I think that my experience in the footwear world is so predominantly working for a corporation that has, all sorts of responsibilities and limitations and legal challenges and whatnot in the creation process. And we're opening up a big can of worms. And I think in a lot of ways, what artificial intelligence is suggesting is quite threatening. I think, frankly, to the design industry, even I was noticing Nico posted even an advertisement for this session, and some, it was met with some people's frustration that it even, is happening, which I sympathize and understand, but the positives for me and the way that I like to present it to others is that it's purely inspirational. And, we are all inspired by what is around us. And it's in many ways, we were talking about it earlier. It's like it's a better funnel for getting inspiration, for suggesting things that haven't been done before, and it creates an unlimited amount of opportunities and choices for us to sift through, with varying challenges. It can require a tremendous amount of sifting, but at the very least, I see it as something that is incredibly inspiring. And provides a tremendous amount of volume of ideas that would be impossible to generate elsewhere.
And Nico, I know one key thing that we'll get into today too is there's a difference between AI and automation.
Yeah.
And we always talk about optimization in the footwear industry and how we can automate things and make it easier and flow. And I think that's a well-known thing, but people are mixing up automation with AI and actually what it is. Maybe you can explain the difference.
Yeah, so the basic distinction is if it thinks for you, indeed, if it's the co-pilot, or thinks together with you in interaction, then it's more AI. And if you have to program it to do something like the autopilot, then it's automation. Of course, there is a gray area where you now see more and more connection between AI systems and automation systems. So that's also what we use, for instance, internally. I remember us showing at the FDRA Executive Summit in Washington, one of the workflows that we had created in-house, where we have an automated sequence of how to get from data about a last or a foot scan to a full shoe, and then use an AI to then actually start creating different types of textures that we could then in an automated way apply to a mold in this case. So there will definitely be overlap. The big attraction, I think, also for companies is in the combination of the two. But indeed, when people learn how to do AI, there's definitely this distinction. So when I launched my course, I had people asking, hey, do you go into Gravity Sketch and stuff like that? And I was like, no, because that's not an AI software, that's a 3D design software. And interesting nonetheless, but that is not AI. So it takes a little bit of work often for people to understand that. And it usually also takes a little bit of work for people to understand that what we get now out of AI is not yet perfect. So that it's not exactly explaining you, I want you to do exactly this. This needs to be larger, smaller. I want this color. With that though, on the flip side, it means that you get a lot of ideas that you would have never, ever thought of yourself. So we've now done 3 in-house courses in AI with different designers, from small startups to people indeed working for large companies like Target. And everybody commented like how much this enhanced their creative process. So that's definitely only a positive.
Yeah, and let's really quickly talk about the constraints that you mentioned, because I think one of the big things is AI is not perfect. We talked about this a lot, but it doesn't understand space, right? There's spatial issues where maybe you can explain it better than I
Well,
can.
essentially doesn't understand. I described it like we had our first AI class this past live class this past Saturday. And I described it really like, okay, it's like when you start working with AI, it's like you have a new army of little aliens that are fantastic at drawing or making photorealistic shoe images. They were just not raised on this planet and have no idea what a shoe is. And they're basically just trained in a certain shape, say this is a shoe, but it does not understand the construction of a shoe. So it's not anything that we can use for manufacturing at this moment. It does not understand the purpose of the shoe, that it's on the foot and that it's meant for foot protection and comfort. None of these things are there yet. Again, there's a yet, because if we talk about a year from now, might maybe different. Chris, you made a really interesting remark earlier when we did a little preparation about Midjourney and when it started, one of the main applications. Maybe you could talk about that to see how fast that went.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that all of us that are in this industry and at least curious about some of these things are, for instance, our LinkedIn feeds or our Instagram feeds are just full of people experimenting with this and on different levels in different industries. But it's crazy that I actually was doing a little bit of research on Midjourney, which like Nico said is one of the more formidable image creation softwares available, and it's only been around for a year. In fact, they just celebrated their 1-year anniversary on, I think it was, we looked it up, July 12th of last year. So remarkably, for as much as this is already influenced and as many people that are already quite curious and or even potentially using this in our industry, it's only been a year. And I think if anything, that makes us all quite nervous as to how far behind have we become in 1 year, and what do we need to know about that. And I think to Nico's point, with her comment about yet, I think that even in 1 year, they're up to version 5.2 of Midjourney. And it's not slowing down. So it is getting smarter and faster and better every month. And we are very, very curious to see where it's all going to be in another 6 months. So it's one of these things where you do kind of need to pay attention to know what's going on. Because if it doesn't do it today, if it doesn't know what a toe cap is today, it very well will soon enough.
And we did ask a general poll question, so you can still answer that if you like, but most people have dabbled with it. And my guess is probably ChatGPT, which today we'll cover much more image-based software, I would say, or generative software. And I'm gonna play around with it while I ask Chris this question around legal issues, right? There are moral and ethical questions that we have as a humanity dealing with computers that can learn and function. As a industry, we have legal challenges around intellectual property. Who owns the designs? How we push information in or images into a system, and then who owns those and how we protect those. Maybe you can just cover those from your background, but also the folks you've been talking to.
Well,
and I'll play around with it.
I will start. I have no legal background. I definitely have been, quite involved in interfacing with legal teams in the footwear industry. Just, I think all of us have designed shoes with 3 stripes on them that we're just like, oh, you better make sure that doesn't end up on the product and whatnot. And naturally we fall into these pitfalls, just being inspired or seeing what else is out there, or just by happenstance quite often as well. But I think that what's most important for all of us to understand is that, inspiration might generate a tremendous amount of variation, but it is all up to us as individuals, and we are directly responsible for what is ending up going forward. If you put in a lot of competitor product as inspiration, or if these platforms, as we know, they are heavily inspired by certain brands, you need to be quite careful, in the same way you do with any design, as to what you're releasing. By no means is Midjourney giving you, or any of these creation software is giving you some sort of free reign as to the opportunity to release something that has not been, carefully inspected by your teams, and that becomes your direct responsibility. So that is a word of warning. I can't for sure give anyone legal advice, but if you add a lot of things that are going to be infringing on someone's intellectual property, for sure, these tools can absolutely make you infringe on other people's property. So that is your responsibility to understand. That said, use it wisely. I think that the way that these platforms work, which is quite important for people to understand, is they are scouring the information that is available to them, and they learn. That's the way that they are set up. They learn about shoes, about anything, based on examples. And so those examples happen to be what it's going to scour when you ask it to create something. So your expectation is that somehow, if it knows what the design of a particular architect or designer is, it will use that information to help generate your image, which makes it super fun, because you can have a collaboration between 2 artists or a footwear company and an architect, or anything you so desire to put in there, and it will do an interesting job of generating something to reflect that. But from a legal standpoint, that is your responsibility to determine whether that is something that your company is legally capable of releasing or not. And that's something that's quite important to do. And I think, as we know, if anyone with experience in how important having a qualified legal team is in launching product, you can get into a lot of trouble with this. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, there's a couple of sides to it. Of course, whenever it comes to branding and such, you will need to check. There is also big differences between the different platforms and what the different platforms use in terms of data sets. Technically, so legally, you are allowed to use an AI generated image. That's not necessarily the same as releasing a product and selling it. You are allowed. It is now kind of becoming best practice, but not everybody does that, to mention that it is AI. So that of course is a gray area. You are allowed, though, to use those images as royalty free, basically, because there is no person that created it. So it's a very gray area. We have a big lawsuit underway against Stable Diffusion, which is one of the largest platforms for AI, open source platform, that indeed used images that could be copyrighted. So, for instance, in the case of Adobe, that has also released an AI platform called Firefly, they have only used images from their own platforms, their portfolio platforms. However, that does not necessarily mean that it's all free of royalties. What you will see now, that whenever you are participating in something that has images or also text, any content, that you will find, even now in Google, in the privacy rules, that you are, if you're just clicking yes, that you are allowing them to use the images that you are publishing, because it's public, for training of AI. On the other side, what also happens, since now so many images have been created, it's called synthetic data. Synthetic data means that it's AI created images. Those images are also used for AI training. And then the flip side is that as a company, if you have a large archive, for instance. You can train an AI with that, and you can also technically license this out to people. So there's also in the future maybe other business models that we could think of from that perspective.
Yeah, and I should just show really quickly, again, I'm a novice at this, right? I'm just playing around. This is Midjourney. I went into, before
I can
we
see you are a
started-
novice because you're in the newbie channel, and we need to,
Exactly, that's-
if you follow my course, you know how to get into the
Telltale
newbie.
Exactly, telltale sign. I'm in my safe space there, although it's weird. So if you see something weird, you know, we don't condone anything, you know, whatever. But I went in here and I just took the image and spit it into Midjourney, and I said, change this to a high top sneaker. And I just started playing around with different versions. You can choose it, and we'll get into this in a second. But this gets to the point what we're talking about. I went into a website, Crocs website. I took their image, put it into here, and it generated a completely different product category. It created a high top sneaker. Do I then own these? Right? This is the question. I'm not answering it. I'm not saying I do, but I'm just saying this is the question we have to start thinking legally in our industry of who then owns this, right? Not an easy thing to get into, but again, this is an introduction. And so now I think where we're at is we'll start to pivot to what we want to focus on today is, and Chris said this very succinctly earlier in our prep session, but if I'm a footwear company, what can I do today?
Yeah.
What tools can I use today to start dabbling and learning and then actually changing workflow and finding inspiration? So I think Nico is going to kind of guide us through certain
Yes.
software that we have. I think the first one we're going to start with, and we're going to share it on the screen. We'll show you what it looks like. We'll show you how
Well,
it
there was
works.
already a question of a smart person already in the question set. How about Newark?
Yeah,
So yes, we're going to start with that one. So because this is one of the most practical ones. In general, what we're looking at today is softwares that are generative AI, meaning that they create something, whether it's from a text to an image or from an image to an image. You also have tools for video, which I do have in my course, but we're not talking about that today. So let's start with Newark. And what is interesting about this one, so it's newark.ai, is that you can go from a sketch to a full render, basically, of that sketch in a matter of seconds. So I'm now going to do a project creation, just to show you quickly in real time how fast this goes. So say that I'm going to do FDRA 1 or something, create project, go, okay, create project. So I've done one before, but I will do one live just to show you. So say we're going to start from a very simple sketch. As you can see here, I will zoom in a little bit for the sake of the video. Very rough sketch that you want to have.
Which in my experience with this software, it actually prefers to have something that is fairly undefined, like this. And this is an incredible tool for sure.
Is this where, and let me ask this, is this where you actually do it on a piece of paper and scan it in?
Oh, you could simply take a picture with your phone. I mean, definitely you scan it in, it's better. I mean, this is from one of our in-house designers that quickly just on an iPad made me a sketch, you know, for this. And now we can actually describe what it should look like. So gentlemen, tell me what you want this to look like. Chris, shoot.
Let's have it in shiny leather.
Yeah. So I will first describe what it is, because that could help. Hold me arrow. Dynamic sneaker in shiny.
I just like it when it makes shiny things.
Shiny leather. Do you have a specific color?
Yeah, you could say gray leather. Sometimes black is.
Okay.
I don't know.
Gray leather. And anything about the sole or style you want to talk about?
Do a white sole.
With a white sole. And is there any fancy background that you would like? Is it placed somewhere?
Let's see if it can sit on marshmallows.
Sitting on top of marshmallows. So okay, now I'll show you a little bit what's below. So this is a little bit more advanced for people. So the sentence that you type to ask the AI what you want is called a prompt. So there's a lot of information on how to write prompts. It's quite a skill. This is a very, very simple one that we have here now just for demo purposes. Here it is telling you how creative do you want to be. So how strict should it be with the text, or would you allow it a little bit more freedom? So that's up to you. That we can maybe try 2 different ones. Let's keep it in the middle, and then you can select what number of images you want to have. Usually it's 4, and now I say generate, and then I probably go. Does that work? Good, sorry, go back to the projects. Oh, here we go. Sorry, my Zoom images are a little bit in front of my stuff here. So it takes a little bit. You will see now in the top that it has that that sneaker render, and then it can take a couple of seconds up to a minute for this to then generate your render.
Maybe really quickly while it's doing it, let's talk about like the language prompts. And I think that's very important, is the skill people need to learn while they're playing with this stuff is what AI understands and what language works best to get what you want.
Exactly.
Well, I think one thing maybe to start with is a lot of these tools do require you to type something in to describe what you're asking for. And it can be, I was obviously being funny with the marshmallows, and I don't even know if that's even going to generate here, but there are all sorts of different ways of being clever with the prompts, everything from asking for a particular aspect ratio, so dimensions of the image that you're trying to produce. Mid-Journey goes, we'll get into this in a little bit, but you can request a very specific lens for your image to be taken with, a camera lens, for instance. You can get into so much, and Mid-Journey also, tends to go a little bit more that direction, because it is in essence a, photography, maybe it's a photography replacement or art replacement, where you do want specific control over things like that, like depth of field and whatnot. That's very important to that user group. Whereas for footwear design, we have other things that are more important to us. But you can, with those prompts that we type in, that it becomes quite important to learn more about how we're generating that type of information. Yeah.
So that's just gonna be a lot of training that we also give, and there's many different ways to create prompts or do even combinations of text and images. So that is quite a skill, and it's also a little bit different, the prompting from version to version, especially in Mid-Journey, and the prompting from different AI platforms to different AI platform. In the meantime, it has generated that. So as you can see, we started from this, and look what we have in just basically under a minute. So I wouldn't say that it's all completely true to the prompt that we gave, because we were looking for shiny leather. Oops. All right, clicked on one. This is this one that indeed has a shiny leather. Here, quite good. Let me click back to the other ones. So gray shiny leather, of course, gray is quite unspecific. So here you already see like what gray. So you have to be, quite literal. But that's good, you will learn. But I think it's already very impressive if you can see the render level that you get out of something like this in such a short time. So that's also why when we're looking at this tool for ideation, that's where it's really good, where we can do something very quickly. And it allows also for better conversation, of course, in teams, because if you just start from that sketch, we know that different people have different movies in their head, basically, with each of these sketches. And then visualizing in this way can kind of help speed up the conversation in terms of, okay, what direction are we actually thinking of?
And then can you take this and then render it even more off of one of your choices here, or?
Yeah, so you see already here, you can see that it says upscale. So you can upscale it to a higher resolution. Seed we will not get into now. This is essentially the start formula, the start seed that the AI starts from. So what is good to know for people, if I would now run the same thing again, you will never ever get the same images. So this is the difference between AI and automation. If this would be an algorithm that I have programmed to do one exact thing over and over the same, then I have automation, I would get the same result for each prompt. If I would now run it again, you could get something again entirely different. So for instance, what we could also try here is to say, okay, looking back at what we had done, maybe we want to try and do it a little bit more creative. You could say, okay, I'm going to upload that same sneaker here. What did we have? Because otherwise you have to copy the prompt. So, and we had something like aerodynamic sneaker in gray shiny leather with, what was it, a white sole on top of all the marshmallows. But that's also interesting because you can see whatever an AI is trained on, that's what it will show. So this AI, Newark, is trained very specifically on products. It will do sketches of shoes, of clothing, of bags, very fashion oriented. So it's not trained on, it probably has no idea what a marshmallow is.
The texture on the bottom two texture looks a little bit like mushrooms on the leather.
Yes, but it's, you could, it would maybe a bit puffier, but anyway, say that we run the exact same thing now, but maybe ask it to be way more creative, so pump up the creativity. Let's see what it does then. So we're going to again generate, I'll move up. It will take
I love this platform just because it's so obviously beneficial. I mean, for being a designer for as long as I've been, going from that line art to something of that finished quality,
yes,
and you know, and potentially giving it the control to generate some additional ideas along the way, or being descriptive as like, I'd like to see what that looks like in mesh versus in leather. I mean, those are really powerful opportunities for anyone. And
yeah.
I think one thing, when you guys were speaking about copyright, you know, that the opportunity to use one of these images, I think that, you know, from my experience being on a product team, none of these images are truly ever going to make the light of day. It's something that you may present internally to say, you know, A versus B versus C. Yeah. But you're really not ever intending on publishing any of this. It's really just for the creation process. Yeah. So I think that if a footwear company is intending for, you know, for AI produced imagery to use in a advertising or a customer facing placement, that's a very different conversation, maybe not for this forum.
No, exactly. So here you see now with the change of the just saying more creative, what you see is that you have slight differences now in the angle of which your shoe is placed, because what I like about Newark also, because it's very product specific, that indeed it will always give you the nice clean side view that you often want. That's not necessarily the case for other AIs where you want to describe how to do that. You see a little bit more differences now in how it has rendered the sole, for instance, what different profiles it gives. It's not as extreme as I could do in some other AIs where I could really push it and it still sticks quite strictly to the sketch, but often this is what you want, because that's also interesting with something like Newark. So I could also imagine that we start combining stuff like this. So you do your general ideation in something like a Mid-Journey that gives you a little bit more ideas. We'll see that in a bit. And then make some raw sketches or use those images as an input for Newark, and for Newark to then specify a little bit better what types of materials. And
Nico always takes it one step beyond. So she was talking about how she generates her prompts in ChatGPT, and then she generates a picture in Mid-Journey, and then she puts that Mid-Journey into, you know, into another software, and she goes all the way, which I think is amazing that she is already, you know, tapped into all of these different channels. But this alone, you know, being an experienced footwear, you know, product person, this is a big deal. Just Newark alone, and there is another complementary product from another individual called.
It's called Rossa. I have it open here. Rossa AI. It's from a young guy who programmed this.
Real quick, Chris, how, like, there was a question, how much time difference between doing this in AI versus traditionally sketching out your own kind of design?
Yeah, I've been trying to avoid answering that one. I traditionally take a very long time to do finished quality renderings like this. I mean, hours, quite frankly, to really get all of the highlights and everything else. I'm very inefficient, I think, on that end of things. Maybe that's why I love this so much more. Some people, you know, it almost becomes part of their process to go through that rendering phase. A lot of times, I mean, depending on what your familiarity with the industry is, it's not even necessary. I mean, for internal design reviews, very often, even as a product manager, I've been like, don't spend the extra 4 hours to make this thing look pretty. I know what, give me some good line art. I'll be able to determine whether that's a good design or not based on that. Yeah. We all have, it all depends on who you're presenting this to, what they're, and I use the analogy even in our conversations earlier, is there's some people that are really good at telling you what they don't like versus being able to tell you what they want. And we all have those situations. We know who those people are when they ask you, where you want to go to dinner, and it turns into a guessing game. But
Italian garden, Olive Garden.
I think that AI is such a nice solution as a way of generating lots of variations of things and presenting, say, hey, these are all photorealistic versions of what my idea is. Are we seeing something here that seems like a good direction? And I think that we've all had those pressures, right? In our design creation calendars, where it's like, I need to come up with some stuff real quick. And the more finished it is, the easier it is for people to say, that looks like the kind of shoe that I'd like to have in our assortment.
Yeah, and I put it into the chat box, but the new ARC is only $29 a month for a pro license and $9 for basic use.
Yeah. So I think it's basically what the way I always describe it is that it adds render to a stage of the design process where you would normally not have render, because that would be too early stage, and it allows you to get to the better ideas much faster.
And this is on your Nico, this is on your laptop, right? Somebody was asking about hardware, but this is are there file size requirements?
Well, so there's two sides to it. So all of these things are cloud-based, basically. So usually with all of the main platforms, the speed of it kind of depends on the type of subscription that you have. So for many of them, especially Midjourney, but I think also this one, the higher paid your subscription, the more priority you have on the server, because as you will understand, this takes a lot of computer power. Why don't we have this fully in 3D yet? Not because we wouldn't understand how to do it, it's computer power. We need to have this higher level of computer power. So it takes also a lot of server power. That's, of course, even a sustainability discussion within AI. Do we have to necessarily do all this? Because it's not like it doesn't cost any electricity, because it does. So you don't have to have any fancy hardware. You could actually even do this on a tablet. So that is very interesting, where you don't necessarily need to have fast hardware. If you are aiming to train an AI for you specifically, then yes, you will need much higher computer power, So, but that's indeed also why you would then generally not do that yourself. You do that with experts.
That's right. And I think going back to that, someone is paying for the computing power on that server. So by requesting these things to be done, that, there is a processor somewhere that is calculating what these things are going to look like. And someone is paying for that time. Midjourney is a great example. They launched with a complimentary service, and just recently, to many people's dismay, I think they just got themselves in a position where it became so popular that people were that Midjourney was just like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to charge a small amount just to contain this, which I think is. Considering what it's able to do, is quite reasonable. It's quite inexpensive, but it's not always going to be free.
So no. So Midjourney, what we see here is indeed not free. The cheapest subscription that there is either $8 a month if you pay annually, or $10 a month if you pay per month. So that's still a very small amount. For that, you have a limited amount of credits, basically. So a limited number of images. When you start, it might be enough. I mean, it's very addictive also this. So I realized very quickly when I started, it was not enough. What you will also see that this is a much more busy interface. Why? Because what is interesting is that Midjourney is operating inside Discord. Discord is basically a chat software that's mainly focusing on gaming, but has become very popular also due to Midjourney. You saw that Andy just now was in a Midjourney newbie channel, which I would not advise. So if you if you jump into our course, we will teach you how to create your own channel. So I just today created the FDRA FDRA channel on Midjourney and invited the Midjourney bot to join our channel. Simply meaning that I could do Midjourney on my own channel and don't see everybody else's stuff on my screen, which helps me a lot. So just to jump in quickly, I'm going to show you a few quick things in Midjourney, because this is not a course. This is mainly for demonstration purposes. So what we talked about before is how do we do prompting? So how do you create that text? How do I know what to ask for? Now, Midjourney has a very handy function there that's called describe. If I want to have Midjourney do anything, I type / and then I get a bunch of different commands, or you type them in. I mean, these are the ones that I use a lot, describe. So it means that it starts describing a picture. I can now upload a picture. Given Chris's previous job, let's do an UGG. UGG boots.
I had nothing to do with that shoe.
No, but so now
I love that. I love that shoe.
Well, it's a very iconic shoe, so let's see how it describes it. So what we see here is that it actually creates for this shoe 4 different prompts of how it would describe what this is. So first of all, interesting thing, again, also from the legal perspective, it recognizes this is an UGG. So, you know, UGG classic mini, blah, blah, blah. So what is also interesting is that it suggests certain artists that work in a style that is similar with this. So that's another recommendation that I have. Since this is so image-based, if you want to have a certain specific style, it's often very helpful to describe a certain artist or art style. That's, of course, where also the discussion, the IP discussion comes from. Because rather than describing in many words what you mean, it could just simply be, you know, artist. So I don't know, John Pawson, but let's click on John Pawson. Who is that? So, okay. Well, it looks indeed like a very clean type of
an architect.
Stuff.
So
Architect. Sure. There will be a lot of, I mean, generally I can advise for footwear to look at architects and sculptors, because we're looking at 3D shapes in general. Anyhow, so it creates me 4 different descriptions that it think matches. The things that you see here, the -AR is aspect ratio, and this is simply based upon the aspect ratio, the proportion that the image has.
Of the ever possible aspect ratio of 206 by 161. But I think that, you know, I think what's really, first of all, thank you for starting off with this prompt describe. And here again, if you guys are swimming with confusion around Discord and prompts and everything else, yes, join the club. Everybody is a little bit like, is this really what it takes to make a cool picture on, you know, AI? The answer is yes. It is not easy to just sit down and understand that --AR refers to aspect ratio. Yeah, there's tons of videos available, tons of resources, as you can imagine. Yeah. All sorts of different ways of approaching this, and easy stuff for you guys to learn on your own. Yeah. But this, typically the way people use Midjourney is they will use it's not a hashtag.
The imagine prompt. I will show the imagine prompt later. What I wanted to show here is that what you can actually do is now choose one of them or all of them. I could say imagine all, but maybe for the sake of time we choose one of them. Is there one that you think might be or do you want to do all to see the
do imagine all, just to show
imagine all.
Again, just a recommendation, just to show the differentiation that you're going to get by doing that. It's quite interesting what it comes up with. I will say, just as a former employee of Decker's, the descriptions are all wrong. So it really, that is not a Bailey. It's not a Mini. It's described like it's not smart enough to even know what that boot is, but it's kind of right. Yeah. And so here, looking at, this is what it's generating just by those descriptions. Nothing that Nico has told it about that product other than an image of it. And you can see how crazy the variations are just by those descriptions.
Yeah.
So this is a good, so maybe the analogy is you're feeding Mid-Journey its own medicine by
Yeah.
doing this trick.
Yeah,
kind
and as you
of
can see, I think this is a good example. For instance, it really does not understand what a shoe is. So even in this one, we're getting stuff that is not even a shoe. So I've had a lot of times that it came up with something that I thought was fantastic that I would have never thought of. So over time, it has become much more photorealistic and much more detailed. In Midjourney, you have a lot of different modes because it's also used a lot for people in illustration. So maybe to show people, I mean, let's pick one. What is the advantage? Because these seem to be small images, but I can now also, if you see here underneath, there's U and V. U means upscale, V means variety. So, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I, for instance, want to upscale this one, this is number 3, I could say upscale number 3, please. We'll now start doing that. That's usually quite fast. And now if I click on it and then open it in the browser, look at how detailed this is. This is highly, so the thing that it's not good at, that it's working on, is text. Makes the weirdest things. Even if you ask it for a specific text, it will not yet be able to do that. But look at the texture in the sole. Look how realistic this fur is. Look at how everything here works. Here again, if you are, an attentive watcher, here you again see that it doesn't understand what is what, because you see the lace here doesn't go through the D-ring. It's underneath the D-ring. So, it just understands what from pictures that it needs to have this crisscross thing, and it has these loop thingies, but it doesn't understand that the lace that is the crisscross thing needs to go through the loop because it does not understand construction. So here, technically, it all at first sight, it all looks like fantastic images, but that's also a trick how you can really recognize AI images, because construction-wise, it often makes no sense, but it understands a whole lot. Also, a question often that people do ask, I'll go back to Midjourney, is indeed if I can now ask it to show me this picture from different angles. Again, not yet. So for this moment, not so much. What I can do, we'll not get into that right now. I can zoom out, I can zoom in, I can ask it to create a whole extra space around it with a different background. I mean, there's so many different things that I can do here. What I wanted to show is a much more simple one, and that is how we mix two shoes. Because the most simple way to use this without understanding any prompting is the command called blend. And that's where I have a lot of my first, the beginner students work with. So if I click on that, you see that it gives me 2 boxes for images. I could go up to 4, but usually 2 is enough. So let me again pick, for instance, the UGG that I had. And one of my colleagues actually just bought a Nike shoe today. So let's take that one.
Blend is, and by the way, as a disclaimer, all of my former colleagues at Deckers, I had no influence over having
the choice. No, I did that. I did that.
On here. I have nothing to do with that, but
I did that intentionally because it's very iconic shape, so it makes it easier maybe for people to recognize different details. Also, because it's quite simple, so you will see how the AI starts adding a lot of stuff. Now, say I want to combine these 2 shoes. I click on Enter. And it's again trying to mix. So here I don't type anything. I use this quite creatively. So like I said, I usually use this a bit differently. So when I'm trying to create something, so it's interesting how it starts doing this here. When I'm trying to create something, for instance, that is modular, it does not understand what the hell that is. So I, for instance, have combined footwear with slices of bread or with Lego or whatever. It's to make modular shoes, which actually does work, simply because visually I need to trick it. So yeah, here you get the combination. So it can be, sometimes you have really interesting results. I must say, I don't really see the UGG so much anymore in this, maybe color wise. But again, you see how detailed this is. So it's really fast for image generation. You have relatively little control because in this particular type of prompting, I cannot ask it to do specific things. What I could do is then indeed, of course, save the images and take it into Photoshop and do my thing, whatever I want to do in general.
Hey, Chris, if you can hop in here too, from a brand perspective, how would a brand best use this?
Say again?
How would a brand best use this? I mean, we're going through things and how do you
okay, well, I mean, just all reality, one, you're never going to prevent anyone from being able to use this. So whether someone's doing it on their work computer or not, it's gonna happen. People are gonna be doing this. Designers are gonna do it just out of curiosity, just like, what would my design look like if it was a collaboration between, Subaru and my sketch or whatnot. It's gonna happen. It's really just about how do we start to push these ideas. And the other thing is designers are going to get incredibly good at prompting. Some of them already are. Just do some simple hashtag searches on your socials. There are people out there really doing incredible stuff already to just get inspired. I mean, if you have certain things that you want to see on a product or certain combinations of images, I think the idea of generating dozens, and you can see it's a black hole. I mean, you can go on and do this all day long of just generating ideas. I think it's going to be the way that many design teams start, drawing from some inspiration. With that comes tremendous responsibility, as you can imagine. It's a lot more analog and obvious when we're pulling a photograph and putting it, of a competitor and putting it on on an image board, which happens every day. Also very, very shaky territory, even doing practices like that. This is taking you into a whole nother realm. So this inspiration thing's cool and all, but it can get you, again, into a tremendous amount of trouble that is not regulated. You don't know what images, even Nico doesn't, we have no idea. She asked it to combine two designs. She knows which designs are influencing what she ended up with, but she has no idea how that even happened or where those are coming from. So unfortunately, it's not as linear. You don't know. You cannot even request what type of inspiration was required to generate those solutions. And so at the end of the day, if a competitor or another company believes you are infringing, you quite possibly are without your own policing. There's no way of knowing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to bring up, and we passed over it slightly on Newark, we don't necessarily know the images that we're generating, how they're being used, right? So if you put into Newark, for instance, and I'm sorry,
No,
I
there
don't
we
know.
do. Sorry
Oh,
to interrupt you there.
Oh,
We
go
do.
ahead. I don't.
Because actually,
It is a
well, because
concern,
I quickly stopped sharing my screen because I wanted to check on my on the 3D.
Oh,
But let me jump back to Newark because they actually give a very clear disclaimer about that.
Good. This might be new.
Where it says here, I'll put it up on the screen. So this is not still for every AI, but here they say, at Newark, we respect and prioritize your privacy. And here's how we ensure it. All input and generated images are only yours, visible only to your account, entirely your choice if you want to share. We will never feature your designs on our website, social media, or any other public platforms. And we do not use your images to fine-tune our AI models. So ensuring that your creations with Newark do not influence or appear in other users' designs. That is a first, though. Because
well, I'll say that is new. I don't think that was on there a week ago. I don't know actually, but
well,
I
just
think that's new, and I think I know why
that's
on there.
So essentially, if you go to Mid-Journey, if you want to do that, so here you can see, for instance, in my generation, it says Turbo and Stealth. That is simply because I have clicked that on in my settings and because I have a very high paid subscription. So Stealth, meaning that indeed you have the same thing, that it cannot be used by them nor published. If you don't have that, and if you have the most simple subscription, then indeed automatically your creations, they're all saved. So that's good for you. You cannot lose stuff. But the downside of that is if it's public, then of course everybody else can see what you make. And yes, this is synthetic data. So this will again be used, if it's the public side, for training an AI.
So theoretically, you could follow Andy Polk's feed on Mid-Journey, and you would have access to everything Andy Polk, all of Andy Polk's beautiful, IP infringing works of art you would be able to have access to.
Well, I can actually recommend that because also indeed when you go to Midjourney, so Midjourney is now still in Discord, but they also have the website part, midjourney.com. There you will find indeed all the images that you generate. You will also find a public feed of everything everybody creates. It's always interesting to follow that because with each of the images, you will find the prompt that they used. So if you want to learn also more about prompting, that's another good.
I think it's important here to say like what we're using today is obviously like more public source. What is coming as this becomes as this proliferates and becomes better, the technology and software becomes better, enterprise will come into play where companies should better scope these things for companies specifically, and that's where your protection is. But to our point, what we're trying to say is be very careful what you stick on these things. It's one thing to take something off, a website that's publicly available. It's another thing to have something internally you're working on and try to play around with it on a public site and you don't know. So be very careful of that. But again, these things are going to morph and change. The point is you need to be on here playing around with this stuff to understand the language, what it understands, what's changing and shifting as you go through these things.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to voice that really quickly.
Yeah.
Well, and the tools are being adopted. The tools are also being, as we've seen, just with Rasa and New Arc, they're being tailored already for our industry, which is super exciting.
Yes.
Adobe never made anything for our industry for, considering the thousands and thousands of people that used that over the last, how many decades. But, nothing about Adobe Illustrator was ever, designed to cater to our industry. Whereas these tools are immediately becoming footwear / apparel specific, which is quite exciting. And I think that because of that, I would predict that in a very short period of time, they're going to become incredibly, mature to the point where, you can look at all these variations on New Arc and you can, request different colorways. You could upload palettes. You could, upload your own materials if you want to see it on something specific. I don't know what's being developed, but I think that these tools are going to become incredibly exciting in very short time that are specific for footwear creation. Which I'm quite excited about. Even, Nico mentioned earlier in a conversation with me that, like Swatchbook is starting to integrate some tools for.
Well, Swatchbook already had a tool like this, which is automated.
Exactly, automatic color creation.
Connected to AI, because it will allow for a lot more automated applications for the design side.
That's right. So super exciting. It's already happening. I think that, continue to pay attention. And I know FDRA is going to stay up to the minute as far as what's going on as it relates to the footwear creation process. But these things are happening. They're, as you can see, I think just by the demonstrations that Nico so generously gave, they're relevant, I believe, in my opinion, quite relevant for many of us in the industry to use today. Or to figure out how that might be applicable, or just out of curiosity's sake. I know as a designer, this stuff is super exciting. Even if you want to see different things in different backgrounds, and I think Nico's going to get into kind of the more artistic side of this with a couple other, I'd say more less relevant to the design side, but a little bit how we can leverage AI. For some of the cleanup or some of the finishing.
I don't know how much time we have. I'm also always happy to show a lot.
Go right ahead. We have time.
Okay.
If people need to drop off, it's fine. We're recording this so people can catch it later. But
all right.
I think it's important to have, and I also think to Chris's point about what we're doing is each different software and platform does things differently and does something well, does something not so well, and so. Some of this is the same thing we see in what we do anyway, right? We have multiple different software that we need to move projects along. And same with AI is you might use one thing in one software and then move it to a different software platform and utilize that AI for something completely different that you need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's see. Next one. Let me go to share screen. I'm gonna show you Leonardo. Leonardo is very similar to Midjourney, except it uses Stable Diffusion. So what is might be good to know is that Midjourney has its own proprietary AI platform, so we cannot understand how they do it. There's no access to the base code. For Stable Diffusion, you have. So I will go a little bit back to the start. So this is Leonardo. It allows you already from the beginning to choose very different models of how you want your stuff to be generated. As we can see here is animation style, photorealistic, because I mean, it completely depends on who uses it, what it is that they particularly want. I often show this one for people that really don't want to spend any money on it because it's free. They still have a free basic one. I will show you one that I already created. So basically what I did is I took one of, if I go to AI image generation, you will see some similar things that you might see in Midjourney, except that it's more intuitive AI. So here it's 4 images that I can generate. I can do different things on how close it stays to the prompt. I'm not going to get into that now. How much contrast do I want to have? Alchemy is a new update, which works, but not with some of the other things that I do. I can even choose here the different proportions that I want in pixels. That's often is more easy for people. You could do that even custom. How close to the prompt do you want to stay? Do you want a tile? That's actually also something that Midjourney can do. You can also create things like textures and patterns that it tiles seamlessly. So if you want to develop like a pattern, for instance, that you want to use on a shoe, you can do that. You can also image prompt by uploading images here, and I actually did that before because I did 2 things. I actually used this prompt with the image of an UGG boot and then one of the written prompts and without. So I can show you the different options. I use the latest model for this SDXL. There is already an SDXL 1.0 that is under the Discord Stable Diffusion, for those of you that are a little bit more familiar with the AI. So this is what it gave me, for instance, as a result to my prompt. This is actually without the image. So you can see how well this works, that it actually has this prompt: Crescent, Australian shield, boots, brown, blah, blah, blah. That the prompt that we did with describe in Midjourney, and it creates indeed these boots that are very much UGG-like. What I really love about this one is that if I click on it, I can ask it to remove the background. I remember how many trend books that I made that I had to do this manually. It starts working to take out the background. Can take a bit of a second, but still way faster than I could ever do it. Let me see, think. Maybe because the images does not have super high contrast. But here we go. So now you see nothing. You're like, did it do anything? And then you click here and then you tell it no background. And look, this is, you know, I wouldn't say it's always super exact. Of course, this was a more difficult one with fur and everything, but still for how fast you do that. And then again, I always teach and think in workflows. So if this is just your base inspiration and you can quickly take that background out, you can bring it into other 3D software, maybe project it so that you, whatever, say it's in Gravity Sketch and you want to follow something like this. It's in Rhino, you want to project it onto a last. These are things that you could do. So I don't really see the AI so much in isolation. I always see workflows of how we can actually use the AI in different ways. And this is super, super practical. These are actually the same prompts, but with an UGG image. So you can see that this is actually even more exact. It basically looks like exactly like an UGG. So there's a lot of different things that you can do here, and Leonardo is fully for free. Leonardo also has, if you like, a small module that allows you to train an AI. I saw that there was a question in the chat about, can I also do parts? Generally not. So one thing, it does not understand what a midsole is, or what a last is, or what a heel counter is, or any of those things. So in this case, I'll go back to the main screen. In this case, you can do, for instance, create a whole set of soles if there's a specific sole style. images and train the AI. It's very simple though. This is not very advanced AI training. So it will do, it might not. We did one actually in Runway, which is another AI platform with midsoles, and it worked a little bit, like 50% of the time to create a midsole, just the midsole, not a whole shoe.
Yeah. I love the questions that I get. I'm always trying to impress my wife and with this stuff. And she's like, oh, can you change the color of the toe cap? And I'm like, damn, it's like, no, not yet. Not that it's hard to do in Photoshop or something else, but it's just like, she always asks the questions that are just like, no, that's not easy to do at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
well, there are some softwares coming that are doing that where you can select really quickly. It will, a year from now, 6 months from now, maybe even, it will already be possible.
That's right. I think that with, considering how quickly these tools are maturing, anything's possible in very short period of time. So I think it's not a if, it's a when, conversation for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. It's even going to know what those D rings are someday and know that the lace
needs to go through.
It is literally year one.
It's year one. I mean, definitely for the further future. I mean, we had a short discussion this afternoon. If we can combine all these different data streams together, that's when the real power happens. That's further in the future, where indeed I connect it to the type of material, my bill of materials, my type of factory, or the constructions that my factory has. All this will be possible, and I would say, especially for people from the executive level, this is where they will need to look at the bigger picture of data streams and what data streams do they have in the company and how to connect those. Even that is something that we also talk about in our training a little bit further down the line. But that's where the real magic eventually will happen.
Yeah. Nico is thinking about these things while the rest of us are sleeping.
What about we could do ChatGPT really quickly, because I know
I think that I don't know how far, but the one thing that Nico has shared with us is just how how diverse her use of ChatGPT is, not just for prompts but for asking questions in general. So if you want to touch on that, we should at least touch on what ChatGPT is and how it can be used. I'm for sure no expert. It seems to be used for everything at this point, but you can talk a little bit about how you've thought about it in relationship to footwear.
Yes. So okay, let me again share screen. Okay, so I'm here now in ChatGPT. I personally have ChatGPT. I have a paid version because I do so much AI. You have a free version, which is ChatGPT 3.5, and the paid one is 4. And also this increases all the time. Now, this is what we call a large language model, and it simply means that you can ask it questions using natural language. And this is really like a full personal assistant that can do pretty much anything for you. At this moment, you also have people asking it to write code. If I ask, hey, create me a program. I saw the other day there was somebody who was doing can you create me a game where Mark Zuckerberg and I don't know, I think somebody from Google, whoever were playing tennis. Can you do that? Yes, it does that. So there's a lot of different things you can do. What I use this for is two sides. On the one hand, we use it for automatic prompt creation. I mean, that's a subject that I'm not going to go into now. And vision, because the one thing that I think people should really understand that becomes more and more and more important as you start using AI, you need to know what to ask your AI. And if you have no idea what you want to know, what your vision is, you don't know what to ask. And on the other hand, you need to understand how to select from all those images that you are getting. So say that I would ask it a question like, can you explain how a footwear designer could best use generative AI at this moment? Let's see what it says. First of all, you see how fast this goes.
And all the questions in the chat today, that's all we did. We just used ChatGPT to answer all of them.
Yeah. Technically, we could have if you.
I did. And look,
if you see this, right?
The header and logo was made by Midjourney. So the branding that we had for this webinar was made in AI.
Yeah, exactly.
And he
So
keeps sending me pictures of myself that he
As
has.
an astronaut. Yeah.
I mean,
Chris
he's-
finally graduated college according to my AI feed.
exactly. So I will not go through all of these things, but it also indeed often is very right. So new design ideas, prototype generation, customer-centric ideas where it can analyze customer data, et cetera, et cetera. What people should realize, and that again is not what I'm going into now, is that with ChatGPT, we can create full automated workflows because I can now connect it to different apps. So I could connect this straight to Google, ask it to find me certain information, or pictures, which I could then feed, for instance, directly into Midjourney or any of the other platforms. I mean, there's a lot possible here. So we're not getting into that now. Those are the more advanced things. It's always interesting how ChatGPT has some morals also. I mean, one of the things that we need to do with AI is to be good parents, as some people describe it. So yeah, here to leverage these benefits, a footwear designer should become familiar with AI tools and platforms available in the market. They would also need to collaborate with data scientists or AI experts to implement more complex AI applications. It's also important to note that while AI can generate new designs and optimize processes, the final decision still lies with the human designer who has the contextual and intuitive understanding that AI currently lacks. So this is where, it's a bit moralistic. It has sometimes a little bit of the finger, but it's good. So, but you can do an unlimited amount of this. So definitely for people serious about AI, ChatGPT is still.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have
Realize.
thought about it, and we've talked a lot about marketing and copywriting, but you've also used it for vision forming, right?
Yeah.
So it's strategy. But you can really quickly talk about that because we do have to wrap up here in a second.
Yeah. So, Chris, you want to talk about that, or you want me to talk about that, or?
Yeah, and I don't know why you're so much smarter than I am, but you asked ChatGPT how to make a sustainable shoe, which I thought was pretty awesome. I don't know why I didn't do that, but no, I think that that's, final notes for me. It's like I have a very inquisitive son. And I'm very thankful that I had Google in my adult life to help me appear way smarter when he asked me everything. But now he's not going to need to ask me this stuff anymore. So from my end, it's just going to continue getting better and better and sleeker. And I don't know exactly where that all nets us out. But I think the one thing that I love that you said early on is if you do not have a design identity, and we're talking about a visual description, a way to visually describe your brand or product, you don't necessarily exist in this world. And it's always been true, right? I mean, it's always been, whether that's a big logo or a way of doing things, but something that is unique to your brand. These tools thrive off of distinctive brand identity. And I think that is something that everyone in the footwear industry needs to be quite cognizant of is, as we employ tools like this, how does your brand show up? Not just for, differentiation, but for new product creation. So I don't know. That's what I think about when I'm trying to get to sleep at night.
Well, I think it's a good point because it's something that the industry has struggled with and has focused on. Successful brands lean into that, right? And so this is another tool to make it better and more optimized if you can focus on that. And I often think too about audience and customer base. If you know who your customer base is, you feed that into these systems to hopefully, again, on both ends, both your product, everybody talks about their classics, right? Your classic, style, silhouette, etc., mixed with your exact target audience to make things. And you need both of those. And if you're just making shoes and you don't know who it's for, it's going to be a bigger problem. We talked a lot about that through COVID, right? It was like brand identity. Brands did really well during COVID because people could get online and find something that they knew and liked and had. And coming out of that, it's still that. It's actually accelerated beyond what I think people think. So it's great to go to Costco and get a pair of shoes. That's fine. But in this new era, I think, to Chris's point, you're going to have to know your audience even better. You're going to have to know what your core is even better. And I think that's a lot of what, I've been toying with, is this authenticity in an artificial age. Successful people will have authentic ideas and things using artificial intelligence to make it better. So, Nico, final thoughts?
I think
Well,
that's
I might want to close off with my 3D.
yeah, let's see. Let's see what the thing turned out.
Yep.
What I started off with quickly, because that also explains already a lot of different things. So going back into KDIM, for those of you who logged on later, we took a shoe that Andy had created with Midjourney into KDIM to create some 3D images. I asked it to do 3 levels: basic level, medium, and high level. High level is not ready yet. So what is a bit debatable about KDIM, and I'll go for basic level first, opening 3D Studio. Here's what I got. Let me see if I can just simply, oops, why does it want to somehow, here we go, we move. So you can see it did not make it open. I have that with some other shoes, yes. You can see this is a really, really rough 3D. So the difficulty with KDIM is, and it's controversial, there is the big discussion that this might just be big armies of underpaid 3D modelers. And to be honest, if I look at a lot of the things, that's sometimes also what I think. So we also asked it to do something on the Sunday once, and interestingly enough, the AI did not work on that day. So it was interesting where you were like, okay, so this is the base version, and let's go to the next one. Let's see, go back to where I was. See if it wants to go back to my dashboard. Sometimes a bit slow because of course I'm also on Zoom. So here's the more detailed version. So that might actually be a bit more horrible even but there, at least it tried to do something on both sides. It's very, very rough. However, this of course is only in a few minutes. What you can do is that of course use this to work on it further. However, what everybody will see, anybody who's even half a footwear professional will notice, this is not with the last, this is wrong proportions. So no, we are nowhere near the level yet of making this production ready in this way. So what I simply say now is go from the 2D image, use something like a Leonardo to maybe clean it up, then bring it into your 3D software, and the real rendering will still have to be done manually. So over time, yes, again, within the next year, this can completely change. I'll stop sharing for a second, because that's also why in our course, I have not pre-recorded the course. We give a different class every other week because there's no way for me to pre-record a course. By the time I'm done, I can do it again. So people get updated on the most recent developments all the time. So it's important to keep up with the pace and to see the bigger picture, I think, of what it can do for you as a company and what it can do to enhance your vision as a designer. I always say, maybe that's a good way to close, that this really does show that you will need your expert designers. What you need is not so much people that are fantastic at 3D. That's a different profession altogether. These people don't necessarily need to be designers. They can be modelers. But if you can imagine the things that we just did today, the images, if you really start working with this, there's thousands of images. I see it in work with customers. If I have more junior designers and they start using AI, they have no clue what to choose from thousands of images. Experienced people right away, boom, 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 this one, and the rest is just, no, we don't need to see that. So this is, I think, really also for senior designers who have always struggled with, do I still need to learn all this 3D that I was not trained to do? I would say, indeed, do not do that, because you're too expensive to do that anyway. You're not going to be doing the rendering because you're senior. They will pay you for the time anyhow. But do this, because this is where we need directors, good creative directors that have vision, that know what to ask and know how to select. You're going to become a curator in the creative process. And that really requires experience to do that.
That's right. Yeah. And there will be no replacement in the very short term, or in the long term, I would even say, for anyone associated with understanding how to truly design, engineer, create a good fitting, comfortable product, hitting a cost target, anything associated with materials, we are far from getting any progress on that end. Getting cool pictures that are inspiring, we're there. And that's cool. And that has value in my opinion, but these, this absolutely does not replace anyone associated with the engineering or production of product. In fact, if you think you can reduce a head count or something like that, you are quite mistaken. Like, this is absolutely no substitution for knowing how shoes need to be manufactured.
No.
All right, in the chat box, as we wrap up, I just want to make sure people saw the low cost of this software to try.
Yeah.
Some of it's free. I myself pay $10 a month for Midjourney just to go in and learn about the prompts and see what people are making and just try different things to help expand my mind and think about what this means for our industry. But again, all those different programs, $30, $10. I've even seen more and more of the corporate licenses for like $500, $600 a month, which is for your team. So these are things you should dip your toe into and mess around with and find what works for your company. Not all of it's going to work for your company, and that's okay. And I also dropped into the chat the Footwearology course on AI, so you can take advantage of that. And I'll also say, as you go through this and you look at things and you're trying to figure out how to strategize for this, Chris is also available for consult. He is out there helping companies every single day look at this technology and figure out how they implement that into their workflows. So I, of course, encourage folks to hire and work with Chris on that, as well as Nico, and train your folks through their academy there at Footwearology. This is the first but not the last of these. We provide it as free for the industry because we think it's really important. Our mission is to support and serve the industry and strengthen it. And so we hope this has helped you get a little bit of a dabble into different software and programs that you can take a look at and start to implement. But you do need, I think, more training on this. You do need Footwearology. You do need folks like Chris to come in, because strategy is so important around this. It's the same thing as our software today. You need a strategy around software. You need a proper workflow around all these things to make it function and work. And the conversation in a month from now and 3 months from now is going to be very different and accelerated. So you got to jump in the stream now to try it out. But on behalf of Chris and Nico, thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your insights.
Thank you for having us. And it's always fun to do this together with you and Chris. It's always the best conversation. So yeah, let's do another one in 6 months and see how the world has changed in that time frame.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. We are recording this and we will post this probably midweek or so on one of our channels, maybe Kicks Over Coffee, so you can caffeinate and
that's another video that we'll have to send people later.
Exactly
Maybe we
right.
add that at the end.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Have a great evening. Have a great morning wherever you are. We appreciate it, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.